Good afternoon, and thank you for joining UTSA's Food for Thought. Today's topic is the future of local cuisine and San Antonio's cultural identity. COVID-19 has shifted the way in which many of us operate our daily lives. The same is true, we all know, for businesses, and it is especially true for our food-focused businesses. When we think about restaurants, you and I, we tend to think of restaurants, our catering events, the festivals that we have in the summer. Most of us just think good eating, right? But the business owners, they have to consider the operation, and every operation is different. The stories and the ideas that work brilliantly for one may or may not work well for the other. What we do know, though, is that in this new space, this living with COVID or post-COVID world, it will take more than just the operators to ensure that our food scene stays vibrant. It will take all of us. Today, we have the opportunity to visit with 4 leaders in the San Antonio cultural space, and they will share information and insight on how we actively participate in and support the local food and the great eats from which our city of gastronomy was born. I am joined today, and I will allow them to introduce themselves by Ann Larios from the San Antonio Restaurant Association, Johnny Hernandez from Gloria, Mr. David T., the owner of Topaz, and Elizabeth from Pharm Table. I am Traci Shelton, and I am your moderator for today. I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce themselves, and they're going to give you a little bit of background on themselves and their organization. Dawn, would you kick us off? Dawn, I think you're on mute.
It's a habit. I'd like to start by thanking the UTSA faculty members, Felipe Barrera, Crystal Cooper, Traci Shelton, and Ernest Hernandez for inviting me to participate with this wonderful panel and to have this discussion. My name is Ann Larios, and I am the Executive Director of the San Antonio Restaurant Association, which is a chapter of the Texas Restaurant Association. I work with a board of over 20 restaurateurs and allied members, which consist of your Cisco, US Foods, Benny Keith, Silver Eagle Distributors, Mission Restaurant Supply. I could go on, but these are all great partners in our association. But my main job is to support the food service and restaurant industry, which consists of advocacy, working with our local mayor and city council, working with our local health district department, working with Bexar County and commissioners, working at the state level with our legislators, and working at the federal level as well. And working with these elected officials has been so helpful, especially during the crisis that we're currently in. Whenever there is a policy issue that's being proposed, our restaurant industry needs to be at the table. We want to know if something is going to affect our restaurant industry in a positive or adversely way. We want to know about it, and we want to have a discussion about it. And so that's part of my advocacy work. We also work with our members to build customer loyalty, rewarding careers and financial success. Whether you're an industry veteran or a new business owner, we have many resources for you, and it includes access to our attorneys, our Texas Restaurant Association attorneys. And so that has been a very key opponent during this time, because we've had a lot of restaurateurs and allied members who have had questions relating to the law, and so it's come in very handy. But we are here to help. I have a great team of Cindy Dorantes and Beverly Harp at our local office. And we're now moving into Western regions, and I will be covering the West region of Texas, which consists of some other large cities. So I look forward to this discussion today, and look forward to questions. So thank you again.
Thank you, Don. We're excited to have you and your expertise on our panel. Johnny, if you'd introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. And thank you for the invite, and great to be part of this conversation. And, it's a big question, right? What is the kind of the future of local cuisine? I think we're all wondering what that is right now. I think I'm still trying to figure out what's permanent and what's not. But anyway, I'm Chef Johnny Hernandez, and we started in the catering business many years ago. Many people know me from our restaurants, La Gloria, but we have a small group of restaurants, about, I think, 9, of which we have 3 of them open. And we're quite diverse as a company. We started in catering and events. So we do off-premise catering. We have our convention center. We have venues. And then much of my focus in the restaurant side is dedicated to Mexican food. So we have La Gloria, Fruteria, Burgerteca. And so in the restaurant business, we have locations also in the AT&T Center and then in the airport. So we've been in this storm with our friends in the food community, and we're excited to. I'm excited to see what everybody else has to say about the future of cuisine. But we are we've diversified and started new businesses most recently. So some people may have seen our grocery store pop-ups that we did in our restaurants, and we've also been cooking food for the senior community of San Antonio. We're also doing retail, and H-E-B's been generous and invited us to do some retail offerings in H-E-B's. And we're excited that we at least have 3 restaurants open, trying to obey all the laws and protect our customers and our employees. So these are challenging times, and we're in the hospitality industry, and we love to serve people. We love to feed people, and we all have this common bond of creativity and hospitality. And I think we certainly are challenged, and everyone, I think, is aware of what the restaurant industry has gone through and hospitality has gone through. Mm-hmm. I have to give a shout out to Don and the Restaurant Association, the Texas Restaurant Association, because they have been a tremendous resource to restaurateurs and small business. So thank you, Don, for everything that you're doing and the state is doing through the association, because I have definitely appreciated everything that y'all have done for restaurateurs, and you have been unselfish with the information that the association has, and I think that has helped so many people, so many operators. So thank you all.
Perfect. Johnny, we are excited to have you on the panel, and we'll figure out together what the future looks like, right?
Yes.
We welcome David T. from Topaz.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to come. I'm probably the newbie, right, out of this group, right, compared to, Johnny and Elizabeth. We have 1 location right now, which is in the north central area of San Antonio in Castle Hills. So for me, I may have just a slightly different perspective, but like most people, because this is my first restaurant, I've been open for 6 years now. So it has been a challenge. Like most people who open, restaurants, I mean, I got into it, really because, as I shared, I was an engineer consultant before getting into this. My wife was actually deployed to Afghanistan, and our son was 2 years old. We were stationed in Meridian, Mississippi back then. Then we moved to San Antonio because my in-laws were in town. They owned the original Topaz, which was in the medical center. And it's only a 1,250 square foot place. So if people sort of know, it's a really small place. And that's sort of where I learned the business. My wife was gone for 8 months. When she returned from Afghanistan, she said, "Okay, David, what are you gonna do now?" And I said, "Hey, I wanna open up my own place." So that's sort of how I got into the business, right? I have an engineering background and trying to put processes into the place. And as I shared, right now, it's actually been challenging. I don't know how, I'm sure Johnny and everybody else will share, but we had 70% of our business was dine-in, right, before COVID-19 happened. And then boom, pretty much overnight, we just were asked to shut down. completely for dine-in. Right before this call, I was just opening up. We did open up for dine-in recently, and I think our mix now, if I have, my paper, it was like 40% to-goes, 30% delivery, and then 30% dine-in. So dine-in is picking up a little, but still we've had to really adapt and pivot. So I hope I have an opportunity to share that. What I'm looking forward to is sort of the technology, like because of my engineering background, I try to implement and use a lot of technology in the company as much as I'm able to with my resources. But I'm also looking at what national chains and what the bigger restaurants, around the country are doing as well. So I hope to have an opportunity to share that, because I think with us going forward, we do need to adapt with this new environment.
Last but certainly not least, Elizabeth?
Well, I guess I want to echo everything that both David and Johnny have said. So I think that we're all facing the same challenges, whether you have 9 or more operations or one operation. Like David, I only have the one location, Farm Table, here in the Central Business District in the heart of the downtown, which is really a graveyard these days. So the office buildings around us are completely empty. The 37 million tourists that are normally traversing downtown and walking along the Riverwalk, they're not here. And most of our residents are in their homes, and they are looking for deliveries. They're looking for takeout. They're trying to stay safe. They're trying to keep their families safe and work within a budget. So I started my restaurant 5 years ago, and I actually grew out of a meal delivery service. So when we launched, and David, we're gonna have to have lunch after this whole thing is over with our mass, because I launched Farm Table as a food technology company. I did not actually want to have a real restaurant. I wanted to have a virtual restaurant. And this is right about the time that a lot of the startups on the East and West Coast were getting tens of millions of dollars in seed money. And here I was, me, myself, and I in San Antonio trying to do what these companies on the East and West Coast were doing. And after a very short amount of time, I realized that I had only penetrated a very niche market, and I really wanted, the whole purpose of Farm Table, which is spelled like pharmacy, is to heal people with food. And after having the business open as a meal delivery service for 6 months, I realized that I was not penetrating the masses. So whether it was 5 years ago or whether I'm sitting here in front of you today, I absolutely believe with all my heart that the mission of Farm Table to heal people with food is more relevant now than it ever has been. Because if we look at the pandemic, if we look at the factors that play into whether someone is either asymptomatic and has symptoms, or whether they're able to beat this thing and not get on a ventilator, much of it has to do with pre-existing conditions. And so I feel like the one thing that I think is positive out of this conversation is that we've been talking about healthcare. The healthcare debate in the United States has been going on for years. And what I haven't heard people say is prevention, preventative healthcare. And preventative healthcare starts with food. So 80% of our health and wellness is based on nutrition. I'm going to repeat that. 80%, that's 80, of our health and wellness is based on what we put into our bodies. And so because of that makes the food industry even more relevant. So it's economic, it's health, it's culture, it's all the above. And we really have to come together as a community if we're going to save our community and save our economy.
Wow, I like that. There's so much there. I heard quiet streets, technology. In my house, the kids laugh at me because I always say food is medicine, right? So healing ourselves and pivot a lot. And I think those will probably be the nucleus for this conversation over the next 45 minutes or so. Dawn, can I start with you though? The impact of COVID-19, Elizabeth talked about the downtown being quiet, the streets being quiet, no one out there. And Johnny talked a little bit about that as well, as did David, right? We know that COVID-19 has impacted our country in myriad ways, including the permanent loss of lots of restaurants across the country. As we look specifically at San Antonio, what do we think is the economic impact of us losing some 25 to 30% of our restaurants?
Well, and thank you, Tracy. That's a very good question. The Texas Restaurant Association, we're already estimating that we're going to lose 30% of our restaurants throughout Texas. And that is a huge number. We've lost 700,000, or I should say over 700,000 employees of the 1.3 million employees that we had across Texas. And here locally, back in 2017, there was an economic impact study that was done. And the hospitality industry, the economic impact of San Antonio's hospitality industry was $15.2 billion. Of that number, 52.7% was from restaurants and catering. That's almost $8 billion. And this report was commissioned in 2017 and, of course, finalized in 2019. But you think about that number, almost $8 billion locally. What should it have been for 2020? Mm-hmm. You know, we can't even guesstimate what it's going to be this year because of COVID-19. And in that number, the hospitality industry employed over 140,000 individuals locally. And for the restaurant and catering industry, that was over 100,000 employees. That's over half of a city council district. So you think of that number, that's a lot, that's a huge impact on our industry. And one of the things that has been very difficult through this process is the fact that our restaurants were required to close for over 6 weeks, whereas our bars were asked to close for over 9 weeks. And, you know, then you have we had the local orders to where restaurants could then, you know, after some time and after the cases decreased, the COVID cases decreased, the governor, of course, came out and said, okay, now you can open up at 25% capacity. Well, you think about that number, and that did not help a lot of our restaurants, although we were very thankful for the governor and his order to open our dine-in areas up again. That's a very low number, because when you think about it, a restaurant, 25% capacity is very little. Just opening up their doors, you've got to think of the overhead. They're paying their employees, they're paying for water, they're paying for the electricity, all that overhead, it all adds up. And so a lot of our restaurants, they waited for the 50% occupancy. Some even waited for the 75% occupancy. Now, a problem with that a lot of people are forgetting is the restaurants were required, or are required, to keep their tables at a 6-foot distance from one another. And so that does not leave a lot of room for your dine-in area by placing tables 6 feet apart. Mm-hmm. And of course, we're going to abide by everything that the CDC tells us, as well as our local municipalities. And so the restaurants have done that. But at 50% capacity, that was pretty much where most of our restaurants have stayed, because the 75% capacity, that there's no more room for more tables in your restaurants. And so, you know, we just feel that it's been a very trying time. We are seeing restaurants closing. We know of at least 10 restaurants that have closed. We've had one in the Quarry that had been here for over 25 years, Canyon Cafe, and they have had to shut their doors. We've seen restaurants on the Riverwalk. We've seen restaurants on the East Side who haven't even been here a year and who have had to close because of this virus, and you know, we're trying to do everything that we can to help them. And that's why we've asked our local leaders, our state leaders, as well as our federal leaders to please show us some relief. And we did receive relief back on June 5th when the president ultimately signed the PPP reforms, and that's the Paycheck Protection Program. And so that has been that has given relief to a lot of our restaurants. In fact, you know, it went through Congress, and we had a local congressman, Chip Roy, who carried that bill for us. He crossed the aisle, worked with a Democrat, and he helped write the bill. And it was passed through the House, it was passed through the Senate, and like I said, on June 5th, the president signed the bill. So a lot of our restaurateurs have seen some relief with that fund, but you know, we still need grants. We need our local leaders to help us. They've received the CARES Act funding, and we want a piece of that. We deserve a piece of that.
Right.
And so we are working on that right now as we speak. One other thing I wanted to mention very quickly is, you know, a lot of these restaurants have paid for business interruption insurance, and most of the claims have been denied. So when you think about, you know, paying that monthly bill, your monthly insurance bill, and being denied during a time like now, I mean, it's been very trying. So, you know, our community needs to realize that our restaurants have suffered tremendously, and we definitely need to help them, get them the relief that they need so they can get back up on their feet again. And that's what I'm going to continue to do.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, Dawn. And one of the things I want to come back to is the economics of opening our restaurants at less than 100% capacity, because I'm sure that the restaurateurs have some numbers in mind that say, at this point, I can break even, or you know, even put something away for maintenance of my equipment. But we have people who are asking questions in our Q&A section. And I want to invite everyone, if you haven't noticed it, in the very bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a little button for Q&A. And if you type a question in there, we'll try to get to your question in the next hour. But the question keeps coming up about the pivot. And so I'm going to toss this to both David and then to Johnny, because Johnny, they had some specific questions for you about the pivot, but I use that word a lot at work as I visit with small businesses, and we talk about pivoting your business now and other times. But what does that look like for you guys? How have you adjusted your business model? David, if you could first talk to us about the pivot and what things you've considered to help you generate a revenue in what Dawn has described as a very trying time. And we've all seen, if we've been watching the news, as a very trying time. And then Johnny, specifically for you, the margarita truck, which for some reason has not yet made it to my street. How does that work? And is that a pivot for you? Is it supporting, the question is it supporting shortfalls from the restaurant? And they actually want the cuisine on the truck as well. So David, if you would give us a little bit about the pivot and the ideas that you have. And then Johnny, if you could help us understand some of the things that you guys have done, which I think might lead to this idea of innovation, so that you can keep your restaurant going.
Okay. Sure. So yeah, I saw one of the Q&A questions, like someone was asking if they should open up a restaurant now and the expense. You know, just touch upon that. I think so. Right now, to answer the question, it's a little bit difficult right now. How have I pivoted? Because when people open a restaurant, I think they may think mainly of a dine-in service, but because of the COVID-19 and everything happening, particularly in terms of my business, is that we've had to pivot. As I shared before, it was 70% dine-in before, then boom, down to 0. So how we have done that is, you know, luckily, I shouldn't say luckily, I mean, everybody knows that you need to have a website and then online ordering. So as of right now, I think that is a must, right? It's not something that it's an afterthought anymore, because when my restaurant was not able to do dine-in, then we just had to primarily do to-goes. And we've actually worked with the third-party delivery companies as well. So even we've been working for them for around 3 years with the third-party delivery companies. And we work with all of them, right? Some people may say, right, David, hey, you're giving 30% to a business. And yes, that's true. But I would rather get, as of right now, 70% of something of $1 than 100% or 100% of $0. So yes, we do not like the fact that we have to spend, right, or give that 30%. But with that being said, right, I work with pretty much all of them. Uber Eats, Grubhub, DoorDash, Postmates, Favor, I work with all of them. So that's one of the things where I think in the future, we still need to continue to do that for my business anyways, because for me to be able to stay afloat and keep the doors open, like Don said, I mean, we need to do that. The other thing that I'm trying to do now is the virtual concepts. So, yeah, I've always had this, chicken thigh, chicken wing concept sort of in the back of my mind. But then what's been happening lately is that I've actually brought that concept onto all the platforms. So when we're talking about, right, the Grubhub and all Postmates, I put it on the platform. So therefore, it's not generating a lot of revenue, but it's starting to generate some, right? So for a small restaurant like myself, I mean, seriously, like every $50, $100 or so makes a big difference, for us. So in the future, what I'm trying to do now as well is to look at multiple virtual concepts, meaning that even right now, as we speak, I'm trying to come up with a different concept, because what I'm trying to do is put a lot of these concepts on these third-party delivery companies. So that's, one way of generating, revenue. Right. And the other thing is, and, I'll switch, let Johnny speak a little, but in terms of technology, what I'm trying to do as well is, I think, especially now, restaurateurs, this is just my point of view, is that they need to begin, if they haven't already, start to own the customer journey. And what I mean by that is that, from the get-go, I hope that restaurants take into account that they need to own sort of their own database of customers. So anything that you do, right, try to get people into your own database so that you can continue to market to them. So what I have done that's helped me is, lately I've been doing a lot of Facebook ads. Whenever the COVID-19 happened, right, I did a lot of that in terms of pivoting. And then I have other pieces of software in place so that I can track all the marketing dollars that come in. So, right, there are these different technologies that we can talk about, but those are sort of some of the things that I've done. And then Traci, if you can think of some follow-up questions, I'll let you ask me as well, because I do have other points that if we have time, right, to make in terms of what the next generation of technology is happening in terms of the restaurant space, and how we, as maybe smaller or newer restaurants, can potentially use some of these technologies and thrive into the future. But, that's just a little cap. Okay.
Okay. Johnny, when's the truck coming to my street?
Man, it's tough to cover all of San Antonio. We're coming. We're on the way. But there is a lot of interest. It's a little overwhelming. I've had to hire a few people to just manage the product or project, but it is it's doing very well. It's something that I believe will stay with the company, and it'll be its own business in the very near future. But I'm still trying to put my arms around it, from creating a new website. There's nothing, because we're one of the first ones really in the country doing this. There is no platform or software available. You're either doing delivery or you're doing takeout, right? There's a lot of softwares for takeout. There's a lot of softwares for delivery, but we're doing takeout, delivery, and you almost need to create your own software or buy 2 different platforms. But anyway, we're navigating through all the possibilities, all the opportunity. People are being patient. We're trying to communicate, where we are and what we're offering as best as we can. But it is, it's taken on a life of its own. We have a total of 6 trucks now. And, we started off with 2, and then all of a sudden it turned into 6. Right. And, but I mean, it's, I guess, when you're thinking back a few months, and trying to understand what is it that we need to do to survive, you know, as business owners, you know, and I think, you know, my instinct takes over, and all of a sudden you're trying to understand, okay, how do we reinvent ourselves and understand what are the sales that we need to support the team that I want to keep to get us through this, you know. And so right away I'm trying to figure out, okay, what are the restaurants I can open? What are the ideas? You know, I mean, I think that there's a process that I go through, and it happens naturally now, right? Which is, there's a lot of ideas that maybe you're thinking of or could be thinking of, and then you try to get the team involved in some of these ideas. But experience, which there's no substitute for experience, you know, takes over, which is, okay, what are we capable of doing? What do we have the bandwidth to do? What do we have the financial resources to do? What is the landscape? What's the marketplace saying? What are the things in the country doing that, you know, because COVID happened to the other side of the world, right? And it got to us pretty rapidly. But I was looking to see what everybody else was doing first, right? And that's just part of my research that I like to do as I ideate. So I always like to have parameters for ideation, right? What are we capable of doing? I always like to do my research. You know, we don't have to reinvent anything. You know, there's very little to invent, I believe, in this world, but there's still opportunity to invent. So I'm trying to learn from everything else while we're trying to ideate at the same time. And I think the challenge for us is because it's happening so rapidly. And that's where kind of experience really becomes a key factor on innovation, right? Because you can ideate all you want, but unless you create actionable strategy around your ideas, you're still standing still, right? So it's tough to do when you're trying to do 3 or 4 or 5 things at one time. But we've had a lot of fun. You know, I told my team right away, we're culinarians and we're hospitality people. People have to eat. So we have the skills to do that. How do we get the food to them? What are the opportunities? And that's where kind of experience kind of takes over. But, you know, we did the market, you know, and the market was a lot of fun. It was more of a community project. I've always wanted a market. So I've dabbled in retail, and I've understand margins and processes and what it takes to launch a market. So we turned our restaurant in 2 days into a market. And one of the things about implementation and innovation has a lot to do with strategic partnerships, you know, because just because your team doesn't have the bandwidth, that doesn't mean you don't have a strategic partner that can help you execute an idea. So that's when I start, you know, tapping into HEB to learn from, okay, how do you do this? How do you do that? You tap your resources, right? I call Cisco. All right, I want to open up a grocery store. Can you deliver a truckload of things to me? Yes, make it happen, right? So, you know, I mean, those are things that just happen because of experience and knowledge, you know. But, you know, we did after the grocery store, you know, we got into senior. We've been doing a lot of cooking for seniors and helping Meals on Wheels. I knew that there was a lot of money being funneled into the local economy because of the senior community needed to stay home. We've cooked for the seniors many times over the years and done a lot of community work with them. So I knew that there's a lot of seniors that need to eat. So I inserted myself in different opportunities throughout the city to feed seniors. So now we feed about 10,000 a week. We've been feeding them for almost 2.5 months now. And then what else did we do? Well, obviously, when it came time to open the restaurants, I rushed to open the restaurants because timing, right? You know, timing is very important, and you need to know what your runway looks like. You need to have your timing down, because obviously the best idea at the wrong time is a bad idea, right? So I wanted to open. I wanted to begin to train my employees, and I knew that modeling behavior in this new environment was going to be essential, right? And I figured, let me do it at 25%. So I didn't hesitate for one heartbeat. I closed the markets and we opened the restaurants 2 days later, and it happened fast. But training is essentially important in this new norm. It's not going anywhere. And, you know, so we opened our restaurants, and obviously now we're doing margarita trucks, which I knew that delivery was going nowhere. So how do you control that? You need your own vehicles. You need your own personnel. You need your own software. You need a new menu. So we started doing at the same time HEB retail products. So because I thought that delivery and takeout was so inefficient, and I love efficiencies, and that's one of my I guess core principles when I ideate is efficiency. How do you make it efficient, right? Sustainable and efficient. And efficiency is, the way it's being done today. I said, this is very inefficient. This delivery thing will never work for me. We need to get food to customers faster. And so that's when I started thinking of vehicles, and I said, alcohol is a lot easier to deliver. It's not perishable, as sensitive as, shelf-stable things. And so we started really streamlining the operation to be efficient, to be quick, to be swift. And that's where the idea of the trucks came about. And we must get, oh my God, so many requests. We're buried right now in requests. So, but delivery's not going anywhere. And, I think one of the important things that we have to understand and realize is that, this is normal, right? It's not going away. And I remember sitting at my restaurant with some friends, and I was saying it's going to be at least 2 months, and they're like, "Oh no, this will be over in 2 weeks." But I said, you know what? I'm going to prepare for 3 months. And gosh, 3 months have come and gone. And unless you're kind of thinking, unless you embrace this, that this is the new norm, I don't think you have all your basis for ideation or innovation, right? So we're gonna continue to try to expand that margarita program for now, and we're just trying to continue to make our spaces safe, keep our customers safe. I tell my employees, you're not gonna get COVID coming to work. You're going to get COVID if you're irresponsible when you're out of work, because we're doing everything we're supposed to in our restaurants. And that's what it takes, right? That's what it takes. You have to be responsible operators. You have to hold your employees and your customers to these principles and this behavior that needs to be modeled by everyone, because we do not want to be, the vehicle for spreading anything, much less COVID. So, I tell them, if you get COVID, it's because you did it after work.
I love it. I love it. No COVID at work, because we're following those procedures. I really want to keep this momentum about innovation and what we do next in the normal. And at one point we were calling it the new normal. Elizabeth, I wanted just to ask you, as we reopen the city, and we have a ton of questions on this, what can we, the consumer, do to help support our restaurants, help make sure we're doing it safely? Heather Green asks specifically, what are ways that the consumer can ensure that we're supporting restaurants, but we're doing it in a safe manner? And then they also want to know, and this is David, he wants to know what new dishes have maybe come about. We know there's margarita now, but what's come about as a result of COVID, a response to COVID, in terms of our changing in our menu?
So, and I was reading the chats, and so many people that are joining us today are asking what they can do. And obviously, we need you to support us. We need you to support local businesses. We need you to support all of the amazing entrepreneurs that are homegrown here in San Antonio. And you can do that in many ways. Number one, I always say vote with your fork. So when you choose to spend your money with a particular retailer, you are voting for them. You are voting for their success, and all of the people and the vendors and the subcontractors that make that business possible. So whether it's our linen companies or our produce vendors or our small farmers that are growing produce for us, or the people in my case that are composting our kitchen scraps, it is a huge tapestry of economic players in our local community. And I like to think of a circle. I like to think of us keeping our dollars within a circle, not diluting our dollars and sending them elsewhere, but really trying to make a focused and concerted effort to keep our dollars in the circle of San Antonio so that those dollars keep recycling. And if, so that's one way that the individual consumer can help us and to help their community. Because when you help us, you're helping your community. The second way is by joining forces. So if you are part of an organization, like there was someone here talking about the JCC. I am partnering right now with the San Antonio Food Bank, which in partnership with the Spurs Foundation. The Spurs Foundation was able to raise money, donate it to the food bank, and the food bank started working with local restaurants to help them hire back their employees and then feed those in need and take some of the pressure off of the long lines that we all know are existing at the food bank, which really at the end of the day highlights how precarious our economy really was pre-COVID and what a farce that 3% unemployment rate was, because with such a short period of time, so many people were in such dire need, and that need is not going away. So again, if we think about our community and if we think about a circular economy, we can be joining forces, organizations, nonprofits like the JCC or the San Antonio Area Foundation or the San Antonio Food Bank. I could go on and on and on. They need to come, they need to partner with more organizations in the community. Maybe it's the San Antonio Restaurant Association, or maybe it's, like Johnny's Kitchen Foundation, or maybe it's a hospital. But we need to come together so that we can fill a need within our circular economy, as opposed to outsourcing that to other sources. And that's where all these entrepreneurs that are here, in San Antonio can come together. They can put their heads together. They can utilize technology, and we can make some really amazing things happen. So that's what I want to say about what you can do about helping the restaurant economy and helping your community in this time of need.
Is there more, when I come to the restaurant, and this can be for any of you, Elizabeth, David, Johnny, when I come to the restaurant, do I need to behave differently? Is it business as usual? What will allow, in addition to me voting with my dollar and with my fork, what allows you to stay open beyond that? Like, what do I need to be doing?
Well, one last thing, and then I'll give it over to Dawn. We have to take the pledge.
What's the pledge? What's the pledge, Elizabeth?
The pledge is what the city of San Antonio has asked every single business in San Antonio to follow, and it is a compilation of CDC guidelines and safety measures that keep our staff safe and keep the customers safe. So number one, everyone needs to be wearing a mask. Everyone needs to be practicing social distancing, and everyone needs to be washing their hands and very, very cognizant of where their hands go in relationship to their face. And if we follow those guidelines, one of my employees, I love to talk about him. He's a former scientist from Southwest Research, and he always tells me that the virus plays by the rules. So if you play by the rules, then the virus plays by the rules. But when you don't play by the rules, then the virus doesn't either. And that's when people start getting sick. So it is not business as normal. You don't just get to choose when and where you want to have a mask on. You must wear a mask, because a mask says, I respect me and I respect you and I respect all the other people around here. So if people, don't want to see us go into a further economic decline, they need to follow the rules.
Because what I hear you saying is we could go backwards.
Absolutely.
And I think that may be where Don's going.
In this situation, none of us know from hour to hour whether or not it's going to be another. I mean, the last week is a great example of where we didn't want to be. This is where I know our mayor and Judge Wolf did not want us to be. And now I believe that there's people in our local government and the healthcare community that are having to look really seriously at all those beds, that they have as a backup plan, and hoping and praying that we don't have to use them. But at the rate we're going, it doesn't look very good.
Dawn, you were going to add.
Yes, Tracy, and echoing what Elizabeth was saying, back in early April, the Texas Restaurant Association while we were still abiding by CDC guidelines, we were also thinking, okay, we've got to also prepare for the recovery period, whenever that might be. And so we created the Texas Restaurant Promise. And that is a promise to our community, to our employees, to our local municipalities, that we are going to maintain the highest standards of sanitation practices. We are going to take health screening tests for our employees when they come to work. We are going to make sure that not only our employees, but our customers maintain 6-foot distance, unless they are, of course, within the same party. But we've had a checklist for our restaurants. We have a checklist in this promise for our customers. Last week, we all saw where Judge Wolf, he issued this executive order mandating that masks needed to be worn at all times by everyone. And we, right away, myself, our board, the Texas Restaurant Association, we went to Judge Wolf and we said, absolutely, we are going to comply with this. We made an amendment to our Texas Restaurant Promise, which states that we are going to comply with that order. And we made sure that we also spoke to our district attorney and the sheriff, because this can't just be our restaurants taking care of their employees and their managers, everyone wearing a mask. This has to be something that our customers also abide by. So we're asking our communities to please help us, to please wear a mask whenever you are out and about. It doesn't matter where you are, business, restaurant, bar, please wear your mask. We're complying with the order. Our restaurants are posting that restaurant promise on their doors. It has been approved as a health policy by Judge Wolf, and so a lot of our restaurants are posting it on their doors. But we are asking our local community to please work with us, wear your masks. That's the best thing we can all do to keep our community safe.
Okay. I have a question from the audience that's saying, hey, I'm a recent graduate of CIA, potentially CIA or another organization. They want to start a business. They want to be a chef. What's the recommendation for them now in terms of opening a restaurant, starting a catering business, getting out there?
Well, patience. Let's exercise some patience before we run off to open anything right now. Yeah, I mean, I think, if there's a recent graduate, I guess it's really not knowing the length of, or the amount of knowledge or experience of the student. But I think even if you're a seasoned operator with capital, ideas, and a lot of experience, you have to tread very carefully right now. There are so many, the issues, and the problem is that there are so many competing voices locally, state, and nationally, right? So when you have all these competing voices, it makes it a very difficult business environment, a very difficult community to live in. And I think, and we're dealing with it. And it's obviously we've seen it, right? And it's unfortunate that we're going through that, but we're living through this, and we're going to muscle through it. But it is not the best time, to probably start a new business. But unless you're maybe a software engineer trying to develop new products, but on the food side, I'm sure there's some emerging markets right now. But capital. If you need capital, then sourcing capital for any new project right now is going to be difficult. So, I say exercise patience and take good notes.
Patience, take good notes.
And Tracy?
Yes, David.
Yeah, so I'd like to add to that, specifically with the question of someone asking what do they need to do to open a restaurant. So this is my take. I have a lot of people who come and apply, right, either for the front of house or back of house, which I would highly recommend someone who may not have had experience, like Johnny said, right, to take time. What I find is that right? People come in, everybody has a dream of wanting to open up their own restaurant or their own business, which I truly understand. I think it would be very beneficial, and we're out there, right, to come into a restaurant and, right, you might be applying for, let's say, hey, a line cook position or some other position, but get that position right, do it well. And then if you find the right, if you want to say owner, I'd say owner, you know, more so than the general manager. So is that try to help that owner out in extra ways. This is where I sort of find the gap, because I have people, like I said, coming in and say, hey, you know, David, one day I want to open up a restaurant. And I said, you know, great. Okay, let's just say Sam. Like, I'm just gonna come up with Sam. Okay, Sam, come and do your job, do it well for 3 months, 6 months, and let's continue to talk, right? See what you can take off of the owner's plate, right? And that's where sometimes I see people missing, because it's like they think that they can come in, right, learn how to cook, which is very important, because at the end of the day, you need great food and great service, right? But in order to open a business, there's a lot more to it, right? Let's not talk about capital of anything, but we're talking about the experience, right? Just because you know how to cook, I mean, the marketing part is really important in terms of opening a business, right? If you can help your owner or your GM see, hey, how can you generate more business for that restaurant, then I think you're going along the right path. So learn with other people's money, meaning the owner's money, right? Go in. No, seriously, I mean, I have to say it like that. Like, if that's the path that I would do, because I would share with you, like, the way I learned from my in-laws, I'll tell you, I only got $1,000 per month in a room in their, right in their house. So that's not a lot. Okay, $1,000. So if I'm not saying to say, yes, I had a different circumstance, but if I can only earn $1,000 a month, and I know, you know, what the rate is, you know, what people are earning, then you can actually do that, right? Go to the owner and say, hey, what can I help? And, you know, take charge. So I think that's a path that I think a lot of people aren't taking, right? Stick with the place. Obviously, if it's a good boss, if he or she is a good owner, then try to see how you can help him or her as much as possible and learn as much as possible from them. So that would be my take for that particular question.
Okay. All right. We are nearing the end, and I'm going to ask anyone in the audience who has other questions to throw those in as quickly as possible. I want to come back to two that have been hanging out there for a while, and that is from each of, well, Johnny, I know what you created that hasn't been to my house yet. I'm just, you know, throwing that out there. But is there a dish that you guys created as a result of COVID? David, Elizabeth? Is that a no?
Sorry. Go ahead, David. I was trying to unmute. Go ahead.
Well, as I shared, not as a result of the COVID-19, but as I shared before, right? Right now, I'm coming up with different concepts. So I can share with you right now that the concept that I'm working on right now is called Asia Bowl, right? I'm trying to get one particular dish from sort of the Southeast region of Asia, and just trying to create the best dish of each of those countries. You know, Thailand, of course, included in it. And I'm trying to see how to package it. You're going to what Johnny says, you know, in terms of what our capability is, in terms of efficiency, and trying to pack it so that we can create it efficiently. So, for example, like one of the dishes I'm working on, you know, right now is called like a lemongrass chicken. And therefore that is the Vietnamese dish. Right, we're going to be working on like a Korean dish, like a bulgogi dish, right? In terms of the Thai dish, we have to put pad Thai because people just know it. But these are sort of the new dishes that I'm, you know, trying to create, and, you know, just sharing it out there.
Okay.
And, you know, so I guess I just want to say how incredibly proud I am of my team, because I have a very small team, and over the shutdown, it became really, really intimate and small. And we were able to maintain our entire menu 6 days a week for delivery and takeout. And in addition to that, we also created new menus on a weekly basis for our meal plans, which have up to 17 different items in them. So, I mean, my head is spinning on a weekly basis just with all the new things. But, you know, it was, you know, trying to be resourceful, trying to be efficient, how we can have as many economies of scale while helping our customers to feel like they weren't just eating the same thing over and over and over again, because so many of our customers buy from us habitually on a weekly basis. So us trying to keep things interesting for them within a budget and within what was being, what was actually coming out of the ground in our area, supporting local farmers that was seasonal and local. So I just want to say that I'm really proud. I've been proud looking at all of our meal plan menus from, going all the way back to early March, and seeing what we were able to do with a skeletal staff, people just absolutely, not taking, no for an answer. And so I really want to say how grateful I am to my dedicated staff that just hasn't stopped working and trying to put more, nourishing food into all our customers' mouths. So thank you to all my staff.
Awesome. Let me ask this, and this is not a question from the audience, but a question that I have. As you guys pivoted, you changed your structure, you reduced staff, you maybe brought some people back, you worked with less people. Can you maintain this pace and thrive, or will you bring more folks back into the restaurant, back into the business as it grows? Do you see your staff growing again, even as you keep some of the things that you pivoted to?
I think it's important that I think David and Johnny should talk a little bit about, the things that restaurants have had to ask of their management, out of their salaried employees. And it's hard to say whether or not it is sustainable, because I know that, at least in my case, we've been going at a pace which is not, I don't think it's healthy, and I don't think it's sustainable. And we're all first responders. That's something that hasn't been talked about, but I believe every single person that's in the restaurant industry today is a first responder. And we're out there, we're on the front lines, we're having to protect ourselves, we're having to protect our customers. And it's a tough paradigm for us to shift to.
David?
I mean, on my end, oops, I'm sorry. I think, am I muted? No? Okay. Yeah, I think on my end, early on, I adjusted the operation because, it's like I need to make it sustainable, because I was planning for 3 months, right? Mm-hmm. So from the very beginning, my strategy was, streamline, cut, how do you adjust? Basically, you create a new business within your business. Right. And, I think my managers, our team is, it is, for us, it's sustainable, right? What's not is, because a lot of it has to do with occupancy and occupancy costs, in other words, to the pro forma, right? Mm-hmm. But, we adjusted a lot of things, and, and like Elizabeth mentions about, really trying to be creative and trying to deliver something fresh and exciting to diners every day is something that is top of mind. And that I'm trying to always balance that with other parts of the business, right? Because the size of our team, the different concepts, the different businesses, so it's unique and different to everyone. But as much as it is sustainable, at least I know that every restaurant that I have to open moving forward is going to be very challenging, mm-hmm. Because of because of some of the, obviously the labor force right now. Literally a month ago, we were already having to put up signs, now hiring, okay? We can't hire enough people right now. We must have at least 12 positions that are open. So hiring people, getting people back to work is gonna be very difficult. So, we're trying to really get organized and really strategic on what restaurants do we begin to open now. Burger Teca, I mean, we get a lot of people who want us to open up our burger concept, but I'm like, wow, I'm just trying to look at all the challenges in hiring right now that we're dealing with. So it's for me, it's trying to understand, at what pace can I open up the rest of the restaurants. I know we open up the airport on July 1st. And again, it's a lot of unknowns, that we're trying to prepare for. So we're just got to take it a week at a time and adjust.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I am grateful to this panel. It's 1 o'clock, and I want to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time. One of the things that came up in the chat was for a list of restaurants that were open right now in San Antonio. And there is a list. Dawn has a list at the San Antonio Restaurant Association. You can email her at dlarios@txrestaurant.org, and she can share that list with you. And we invite you, as Elizabeth said, to vote with your fork every day and often to help us keep San Antonio open completely. And that is supporting our restaurants, which are a significant part of our economy. I am relatively new to San Antonio, but I have found that San Antonio is communal. It is a place that loves everything about itself and all of its people. And so as we love on one another, I ask you guys to do your part. Support local, support our restaurants, wash your hands, wear your mask, be a good neighbor, and eat well. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Traci Shelton. Our next Food for Thought will be July 19th, and the topic will be cookbooks, cuisine, and culture. You can register for that online, just like you registered for this Food for Thought. We thank you very much for joining us, and we hope you have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.